The old man was dead. The old man was dead, and Malcolm could feel nothing but ice-cold relief washing over him. Every step he took seemed lighter, every breath seemed cleaner, as though he were walking through a bracing autumn evening. He knew he should be devastated, should be shattered by the loss of what had been the one constant in his life for as long as he could remember. But when his eyes passed over the stained and sagging armchair where the old man had sat, unmoving for the last decade, the absence of that angular, judging face brought a smile to his lips. A smile of freedom. At last he could do what he liked. No prying questions when he walked in the door, no more knowing sneers, demanding to be told where he had been. No more tiptoeing around his home in a desperate, futile attempt to avoid the sight of someone who, despite never seeming to move from that spot, seemed all too aware of Malcolm's every private thought, his every dark impulse. What was the old man's name again? Malcolm could barely recall. It didn't matter, though, no more than it mattered whether he had been a father, grandfather, elderly friend, or even some sort of landlord. What mattered was that for as long as he could remember, how long was that? The old man had sat on his threadbare throne and held court over Malcolm's life. And now he was dead. The morticians had taken the body away, or at least someone had, and he had been the only one at the sad, overcast funeral. Now he was free to live his life. To live his life? What did that even mean anymore? What was there for him that wasn't simply avoiding the cruel barbs and snide judgments of the old man? Perhaps love? Yes, perhaps now, without the wrinkled threat that chuckled from his armchair at any thought of his happiness, perhaps now he could find someone to spend his life with. Malcolm fired up his old computer, which groaned to life with a sputter. The monitor cracked and broken, and the keyboard stiff to the touch. For a terrifying moment it seemed as though it might not work at all, but finally the screen lit up in a dull, sickly green. Malcolm clicked through until he found what he was looking for. A dating site. The name of the website was distorted beyond recognition, but he seemed to still be logged in from all those years ago, and he began to click through profiles. Mary. She seemed nice, but somehow too long. Jenny seemed to have a good sense of humor, but half of her was backwards. Hannah didn't seem to have anything wrong with her at first glance, but her profile smelt of rotten meat. Then he found Antonia, and he gasped. Her smile was so wide and so open that all at once he felt a wave of warm infatuation pass down and over his body, permeating everywhere, except for his right shoulder, which remained ice cold. Something was wrong. Malcolm moved his fingers across and over the area, feeling the space between his neck and arm. There was a lump there, hard and round and smooth to the touch. He pressed it gently and winced as pain radiated through him. Gingerly, he unbuttoned his shirt, sliding the rough fabric down his torso, and examined the shining protrusion. Some sort of callus, maybe? A tumor? Malcolm's mind began running frantically through all the worst-case possibilities. And then it opened. The iris was dull grey, surrounded by yellowed, bloodshot tissue, and the pupil was dull, almost cloudy. But the eye that stared out from his shoulder seemed to focus well enough. It swiveled wildly, looking all around the room as Malcolm desperately tried to hold back a scream. Then it settled on the dull glow of the computer monitor, on Antonia, and the icy shock of bitter disapproval shot through his veins like lightning. His hand lunged out almost on reflex, snatching the power cable from the computer and pulling it free. The screen went dark with a small pop, and Malcolm was left sitting there, shaking. The eye turned once towards his pale and terrified face, then closed in satisfaction. The waiting room was almost empty when he got to accident and emergency. The nurse sat at the desk, gave him a weird look, and told him to take his seat. He tried to settle down on one of the smooth orange chairs bolted to a long iron bar to form a crude bench, but he couldn't get comfortable. From underneath his coat he could hear it, the tiny, whispering mouth that had opened up on a long tube ride over. "They're going to laugh at you," it hissed. "And they won't. They're going to tell you you're a freak, a deviant. They're going to put you away. They're going to cut you out of me, so you can kill me again." "I didn't kill you." "You might as well have, with your insolence, with your disrespect. Shut up. I'll tell them. I'll tell them all the horrible thoughts you keep deep inside." Malcolm's leg wouldn't stop shaking. Somewhere, from deeper within the hospital, a laugh echoed, cold and tinged with the judgmental cruelty that he recognized so keenly. He pulled his coat tighter and got up, stepping out through the automatic doors and out into the cold night. He was going to have to do it himself. That was all there was to it. If a professional medical option wasn't on the cards, then what other choice did he have? He hurried into the supermarket, the dull throb of his shoulder causing his right arm to hang stiffly by his side. There were no trolleys left, nor any baskets, so he grabbed what he could and held them to his chest, dreading the possibility they all might fall tumbling to the ground at any moment. Kitchen knife, paper towels, disinfectant, vodka, ibuprofen. As he walked through the huge aisles that seemed so much longer than he remembered, he tried to ignore the looks of curiosity and disgust he saw on the faces of the other shoppers. By now his shoulder was clearly swollen, lumpy, and bulging under his coat. One woman simply stood there and pointed silently as Malcolm felt the tiny, stick-thin arm creep out from under his collar, trying to push the thick coat out of the way. "Let me see, Malcolm. Let me see." Malcolm ran out of the store, dropping his items as he went. All except the kitchen knife. The flat was dark and silent when Malcolm flung the door open and fell inside in a heap. The pain in his shoulder was now unbearable as he clawed his way over the grimy, matted carpet, hands sticky from the decades of unnoticed dirt. The only light in the room spilled out from the static of the old television screen, casting his agonies in a pale and washed-out cathode ray glow. His coat and the shirt beneath it were rags now, torn by the sharp, flailing fingers that reached out from his shoulder. Malcolm tried to breathe, to concentrate or center himself, to find any way to carve out a moment in the chaos and think. But there was none. He pulled off the remaining slivers of material, exposing the tiny, half-formed face and limbs to the open air, and he raised the knife. "Do it, you coward!" As Malcolm plunged the blade into his shoulder, he felt it split. Skin, muscle and bone torn apart, opening up like an earthquake fissure, a red and gore-streaked chasm into himself. The sound he made could technically be called a scream, but the agonies he cried out through a gurgling throat full of blood were beyond any noise he could have conceived himself making. From the wound came first a hand, then slowly, inch by inch, the arm followed, wrapping itself around his neck for purchase, and pulling out a shoulder, a neck, a face, a sneering, familiar face. It took 10 minutes for the bloody form to emerge in its entirety, and another 20 for it to writhe and crawl its way over and up onto the old armchair. Through all this time, Malcolm lay there, quietly bleeding, tears streaming down his cheek and soaking into the carpet. The pain was nothing to him, not anymore. What he hated most, what he truly feared, was what stared down at him from that chair, that once again regarded him with sneering, bitter judgment. He could feel the old man's eyes on him, and he knew that he would never be rid of them. Not exactly subtle, but then you never were you? Not really. Well, if that's the most compelling argument you have, I'm going to go and apologize to my boyfriend.